Welcome to Merchant Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, hear a weekly update on what we are seeing in the fields and what is showing up this time of year. We talk about the components that add up to your yield potential in our starting line and starting line plus with Saltro and Trunemco seed treatment options and how they help combat diseases such as sudden death syndrome. Find out what the push test is on corn. Corn sweat is showing up. We address the question, does it truly raise the humidity in your area?
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Ben, Dylan, and Lynn. And Ben, you've got some things that you want to talk about that you're hearing about and seeing?
Yeah, been doing a lot of scouting lately, or doing as much scouting as we can with in between meetings and whatnot, and
rain.
And rain. Yep. That's we've gotten plenty of that in certain areas over the past 2 weeks, but. Really, in the corn side of things, I'm really trying to keep an eye on ear leaf and above. It seems like the fields that were treated at least once, those are holding pretty good. I was reading an article from Iowa State this past week, and Dr. Allison Robertson was the one that was authoring that one from Iowa State, and she's in charge of Plant Path specifically for corn. And she was talking about the guys that chose the newer 3 mode of actions, or the little bit more premium fungicides, with those products against southern rust specifically, we can get like 45 days plus of protection with southern rust if you have a very good or excellent rating, and there's a lot of very good and excellent rated products on the market for southern rust. So from a southern rust perspective, we're definitely past the 3-week period. We're definitely past the 4-week period from where tassel just started, and guys are probably pulling the trigger on the early side, and that fungicide is definitely holding us through. A lot of the earlier planted fields are in dent stage for the most part, so most of the time it's kind of hard to get a fungicide application to pay for itself when you are past R5, because there's just not enough time. The plant is going to be starting to defoliate or senesce, mature in the short term. So things are looking pretty good from that perspective on the one pass program, guys, for sure. From a soybean standpoint, I haven't walked a lot of soybean fields, but we are starting to see what would appear to be sudden death-esque symptoms. I can kind of, after talking with a handful of sales managers, and some of these fields I don't know the history on or what varieties that are planted, they're competition style varieties, but I'm kind of guessing that these fields that are showing up, that showed up first and is expanding rapidly out in the fields, I'm imagining that they probably don't have a sudden death seed treatment on them, because it seems like the ones that I know about that have a sudden death seed treatment, you may just find a plant or two here or there scattered out throughout the field. And the ones that my assumption is that don't have either a Saltro or an Olivo style of product on, it looks like the sudden death is expanding rapidly. So is that kind of similar to what you guys have been seeing on the sudden death mark?
Yeah, I would say you can spot most of it just driving down the road from now. It seems like it might be even starting in near the ditches and then working in for some reason. I don't know, just happens to be that way, but you can definitely start to see kind of some pockets even in some fields that we know maybe have our Saltro on it. You can see it, but I mean, it's not anything heinous right now. It's little teeny tiny pockets that just, everything's so green, it looks good, they stick out like a sore thumb. So when you're really looking at it, it's not near as bad as what it looks like. It's only a couple plants that are affected. So
just a little bit of review. It is a root disease, and Ben, help me out here. It starts basically at planting time. At time of emergence is when the infection occurs, and the longer it is cool, damp, and wet, the longer the infection period. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
And right now, there are differences in varieties, that part we know, but there are no totally resistant soybean varieties to sudden death. Sudden death can also look a lot like crown rot, which we're starting to see more of. And the Saltro, which, in Starting Line Plus, which is our premium product, with Saltro has 2 additional modes of action besides Saltro to help out a little bit. There are 2 biological options, and Ben, you might explain those. So besides Saltro, for sudden death, and then you picking a variety that has as much tolerance as you can find, then we add 2 more biologicals. Talk about that.
Yeah, so we have 2 systemically, they're called SARs, systemically acquired resistances. There you go. Thanks, Lynn.
I don't have a newborn.
Maybe a little bit more sleep at night. So we have the systemic acquired resistance. So what that does, we have Heads Up and we have chitosan. And both of those products, when they are imbibed, when that soybean takes its first drink of water, they are turning on genes on the inside of the plant that would normally get turned on during a stress or an infection period from different fungal diseases. So that gene already gets turned on. It makes the plant less susceptible to infection because they work in different ways. Some of them make the cell walls a little bit harder to penetrate. Some of them create a different acid that's inside the plant that once the fungal species tries to infect, that acid doesn't allow for a chemical reaction on the inside. So sometimes it's about, sheer like actual strength of the cell walls, and sometimes it's about some different enzymes and things that are acids that are happening on the inside of the cells. So we have both of those products, and neither one of those products, in my opinion, do the heavy lifting like what Saltro does in the extreme cases, but they should be there to help, and they are there where if you get a bushel or 2 response from them being in the seed treatment option, it is a huge return on investment. So
yeah, and both Heads Up and chitosan is in our standard starting line soybean seed treatment.
Correct.
And then when you go to starting line plus, then you get the Saltro. So in essence, we're giving you at least 3 different products in starting line plus that has some activity or excellent activity, at best we know of, for sudden death. And that's why, the trend right now for farmers is plant as early as the ground's fit. And when you're planting as early as the ground's fit, you need to protect yourself from sudden death, because particularly on the heavier soils, the better soils, because that seems like, I always tell farmers, if you get sudden death, that's a compliment that you've got some of the best ground in the neighborhood, but it's really not. But in reality, it doesn't seem like it affects the sandier soils and the lighter soils as much. But anyhow, pay attention to your seed treatments. You're planting Mershman, you're covered. But some of these other brands, they're just putting on your basically F&I, which stands for fungicide, insecticide, and you're literally buck naked out there for protection. So that's one of the things I know Ben, Lynn, Dylan, they work very hard to say, what is it that we can add to our seed treatment that will enhance the performance of it when we have these unknowns, because there's nothing worse than having a beautiful crop and you're getting towards the finish line. Here it is August and you start seeing dead spots out there, or even worse, big sections. So that's a major difference between our brand and a lot of other brands. I'm not aware of any other company that's offering that type of protection. There probably is 1 or 2 out there, but we know that we have it.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Dylan was talking about, you can see it coming from your waterways or your ditches moving in. You have to have freestanding water or field capacity water for these diseases to infect. That's why compacted areas have a tendency to, you'll see sudden death show up first in the compacted areas that may have sat saturated for longer than what the rest of the field sits. So those are definitely some of the things. But one of the key things that I wanted to talk about is when we see those individual plants scattered throughout the field, that is Saltro applied or starting line plus protected, can you imagine what that would look like if you didn't have that kind of protection already set in? Because one of the things, reading Ken Ferry's article that he had out this week, is the field will just explode like fire. And then that's the reason that sudden death has the name that it does, because it will just explode and it'll spread throughout the field very, very quickly. When we have treated fields, most of the time it keeps the incidence to the most isolated points where you would have had the most compaction, where you would have had the most water, where the infection is the worst. So you're really protecting 90-95% of the plants out there, but it's just the worst spots in those fields that look like they're getting infected.
So it's a root disease, but it doesn't show up to August, and the reason why, Ben, is the toxins are moving out of the roots up to the plant because the plant's pulling all the energy it can to fill those pods, and that's when those toxins literally move up. Otherwise, it's concentrated in the roots for the most part. And you can have sudden death without above ground symptoms. The leaf, the green veins and the brown area between the veins. You can have sudden death in the roots but not show foliar symptoms. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And it all has to do with the amount of rainfall that we get in the pod fill time frame, because plants use relatively less water when they are in the vegetative states, even the pod development states. It's the seed fill that the plant really has a huge demand for water and nutrients. And when you have free flowing or plant available water to field capacity, there's not as much tension between the roots and the water and the soil particle for the plant to uptake water. So it's not necessarily luxury consumption, but when there isn't that tight gradient or the delta between a higher delta between your soil that wants to hold on to the water and the plant that wants to take the water in, when there's not as much tension there, that plant will uptake more water. And as it uptakes more water, that disease has been building all year long. When that disease has been sitting there building up all those toxins for that extended period of time, and then you have this huge influx of toxins that are there and available when you're pulling all this water and you're pulling all the toxins in. So like when you do have sudden death, the worst thing that can happen is a lot of rain in the month of July and a lot of rain in the month of August, because it's just going to continue to push those toxins through the plant. And that's why I think in a lot of areas for an extended period of time we hadn't seen very much sudden death show up, is because we hadn't been getting the July rains. We've been fairly dry in July, and we get these 2, 3, 4/10 inch rains, and it's keeping the crop along, and we've had really good crops, but we haven't had these deluges of 2 inches at a time, 3 inches at a time, where that soil moisture profile is completely full and the plants are uptaking a lot of water.
And then there's one other piece to sudden death they believe there's a connection, and that's soybean cyst nematodes.
Right.
And you might explain how they have a theory that if you have higher levels of nematodes, which, Dylan, to your point, tends to be where soil runs together, because they move with the soil. So your lower spots where water runs together, cyst nematodes, because, well, go ahead, Ben, I'll let you explain it. You do a much better job than I do.
I don't know about that, but basically the cysts have the ability to make infection points, and talking with the professionals at Syngenta, it has something to do with the lateral root hairs, where cysts have a tendency to want to put eggs on the most young, fresh roots. It has something to do with the amount of lateral root hairs that plant has out there, and the amount of infection that happens. So if you have a higher cyst pressure, you're going to have more potential points of infection and opportunity for that disease to come in.
So again, another layer of protection with our our Starting Line Plus is the Saltro, which has activity against soybean cyst nematode, and Trunemco, which actually has 2 different modes of action. So again, 3 layers to help against soybean cyst nematode. You control your soybean cyst nematodes, and of course you can always use Peking also. Then all of a sudden you have, basically what they do is they poke a hole in the root, and then that allows the toxin or the sudden death to come into the plant. So as you can see, the seed treatment that we put on our seed has a lot to do with a lot of different things. And again, just because it's red or green or whatever color seed treatment is, you may be missing all these little things that add up to yield.
Yep.
And that's come standard with Mershman seeds. Starting Line Plus are the 2 biologicals, the chitosan and the Heads Up. And then when you go to the Starting Line Plus, you're going to get the Trunemco and the Saltro.
I think another maybe potential unintended consequence, planting early is one, but also on the other side, what Saltro Oliva has allowed us to do is extend our maturity window. So 10 years ago, around here locally, you planted a 2.8 to a 3.1 because we would just get annihilated by sudden death. So the hope was that you would plant a bean that was early enough that you would get it through most of pod fill before sudden death would basically set in, and that wouldn't. But now we've been able to provide some protection. So to Joe's point, we are now extending our window further into the maturity season to allow for better pod fill. So are we putting ourselves at risk for sudden death? Potentially. I mean, absolutely, actually. But we're also increasing our overall yield, because it wasn't that long ago we could do 270, on a good year, 270, 280 bushel corn, turn around, put the bean head on, 35, 40 bushel, because sudden death would just wipe you out. And now, I mean, it's 70 bushel beans around here. Guys are having a bad day. Like, they're a little bit disappointed. So, I mean, not that long ago, 10 years ago, we were trying to manage this through a way that did not enhance yield, and now we're able to enhance it. So just kind of remember that there not that long ago we were trying to do this through not the most economical way, and now we've found a product that works really well, or products that works really well, and we're able to grow longer maturing beans that enhance that yield. So yeah, does it stink when you have probably parts in the field that are running 90, 95 bushel, and you have a spot in the field that's running 70 because sudden death hits it? But at the end of the day, we've almost been able to double our yield potential by being able to have earlier planting windows with longer season beans, and trying to make put the most pods onto that plant and get that into the combine.
So just keep in mind, no product is 100% bulletproof. This is the best products that we can do and put around our seed treatments and our soybean genetics and source of resistance on cyst nematode. We're putting all that together to give you the best way to combat this disease. And of course, we know farmers aren't going to plant later, because you can plant later and avoid this disease completely, but it makes no sense from the standpoint of yield. So we're going faster, 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 earlier, earlier, earlier. So these are all things that when you go on your heavy soils and you're looking at your past history of sudden death syndrome, you better be taken into consideration. And if you're buying from brand X, they're not going to help you too much. I mean, they got maybe a couple tools, but we've got the complete set. So anything else that you guys want to bring up?
I think on the corn side, Ben, you brought up a pretty good point there, and the other one is to get out there, if we are in that dent stage, to make sure you're doing the push test here very soon, because that, if you did not put on a fungicide, or if southern rust is coming in pretty heavy, just make sure that you're identifying fields that you need to go harvest first.
So when you say the push test, you saying like push Ben, or are you saying you're saying push that corn plant and see how strong it is?
Or in my case, if you just happen to walk through the field and you're wider than the rows are, corn tends to whip around. But yeah, go out, give it a push. You should probably get your arm extended, and at this point in the game, you shouldn't have any snapping at any of the lower nodes below the ear leaf. If you do, definitely make note of that. Or yes, the pinch test.
At what node do you do the pinch test?
Probably 2 nodes up, 3 nodes up, somewhere 6, 8 inches.
And then what? So if you pinch it and you can collapse it, you got trouble coming.
Correct. Because back to that, what we're probably going to see is, as we're in this rapid stage of our developments with just the heat and all that, the plant is vigorously trying to fill this, and it's going up against the tar spot, southern rust, maybe gray, northern, whatever that the gamut is, because everyone has problems. Is going to start cannibalizing itself, and when it start having cannibalization, that's when you run into some stock
So if it's not going to get it from the leaves because of disease, it's going to pull it from the stalk.
Yep.
And so when it empties the stalk, and you got basically a skeleton holding up your that big yield ear. Right?
Correct. And that is, I mean, kind of laugh about it, but that is true. Like the stuff that we're looking at, there is a monster ear out there to be held up by that stock. And if you have any degradation in that stock quality, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And most of it, from a management standpoint, is just picking on, if you got one that looks a little bit worse, obviously go pick that one first. Or if you got a dryer, maybe start thinking about getting that ready to rock and roll. You might have to take that field off at 25, 24%, 23%. I might not be able to leave it in the field and take it out unless you're comfortable with picking it up off the ground.
Manage your risk.
Yep.
Right? Well, in agriculture, we get blamed for a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff. I mean, anything goes wrong, if they tie it back to farmers or agriculture. And I saw this article in the MAFG, American Farmer Grower magazine, which a newspaper comes out of the Mid-South. But University of Kentucky, Chad Lee addressed corn sweat. We've been hearing in the last few weeks about corn sweat, and they're saying all this corn out there is raising the humidity of the atmosphere. And so Chad Lee said he started going through the numbers, and I'll give you the Cliff Notes version if you don't know what Cliff Notes are. When you're in college and you had to read all these books, sometimes you say, I don't feel like reading the book. I'm going to cheat a little bit by reading my Cliff Notes and get the summary. So I'm going to give you a summary. Well, he explained that the average corn plant will emit 4,000 to 8,000 gallons of water per day per acre. Okay. And in current conditions that we have right now, everywhere, and I don't care if it's above a parking lot, above your house, above a cornfield, there's 160,000 gallons of water in the atmosphere. So corn plant emits 4,000 to 8,000 gallons, depending upon, and again, the higher the humidity, it actually emits less. So he's saying, how does 4,000 to 8,000 gallons compared to 160,000 gallons in the atmosphere on an average day, raising the humidity in your area? So consequently, it turned out that he's saying, no, it's not true. It's not true. So in summary, corn is not making your days more humid unless you are actually walking in the cornfield. If you're walking in the cornfield like Ben and you guys do,
can confirm,
you are in a much more humid environment because the corn holds that humidity close to the ground. So anyhow, the bottom line is they did some estimates like in Nebraska, where it's much drier. The water loss from a cornfield is approximately 1/3 of an inch per day. Okay, and that would equal 8,960 gallons of water per acre for that particular time. Now, when you go east of the Missouri River, it suggests it's about 4,000 gallons per acre. So looking at different studies, that's where they came up with the numbers. So anyhow, the bottom line is corn is not raising humidity in your environment. And if your city folks are saying, all this corn's making things humid, you say, well, 160,000 gallons in the air on any given time, we're giving out 4,000 to 8,000 gallons of additional humidity, you might say. So anyhow, I think the other thing that you should remember, particularly when you talk to folks that are worried about carbon dioxide, an acre of corn can remove as much as 35,000 pounds of carbon dioxide and release about 25,000 pounds of oxygen per acre over the growing season. So corn's a good thing.
Yeah.
Corn's a good thing.
I saw a statistic that in peak respiration in corn, it actually produces more oxygen than what the Amazon rainforest does. Now, granted, Amazon does that all year round, but at its peak, the U.S. Corn crop produces more oxygen.
The last thing I would like to go over is, a few weeks ago I told you about the struggle that the butterfly has and how that makes you stronger. If you can go back to that episode if you want to check it out. But I get some good information from Jordan Van Camp and the Ag Swag people. They make premium items for the ag industry. And this one here is actually came from littlethings.com. And it's a story about, in life we all deal with struggles of some type. And, sometimes these struggles are tough. And you have to try to, how do you get through these struggles? So a young woman went to her grandmother and told her about her life and how things were so hard for her. She did not know what she was going to do to make it through and wanted to give up. She was tired of fighting and struggling. It seemed that as one problem was solved, a new one arose. Her grandmother took her into the kitchen. Grandmothers are pretty sharp, they've lived a little bit of life. She filled 3 pots with water and placed each on high fire on the stove. Soon the pots came to a boil. In the first pot, she placed carrots. The second, she placed eggs. In the third, she placed coffee beans. She let them sit and boil without saying a word. In about 20 minutes, she turned off the burners. She fished the carrots out and placed them in a bowl. She then pulled the eggs out and placed them in a bowl. Then she ladled the coffee out and placed it in a bowl. Turning to her granddaughter, she asked, "Tell me, what do you see?" "Carrots, eggs, and coffee," she replied. She brought her closer and asked her to feel the carrots. She did and noted that they were soft. She then asked her to take an egg and break it. After pulling off the shell, she observed it was a hard-boiled egg. Finally, she asked her to sip the coffee. The daughter smiled as she tasted its rich aroma. The grandmother then asked, "What does it mean?" The granddaughter then asked, "What does it mean, grandmother?" Her grandmother explained that each of these objects had faced the same adversity, boiling water, but each reacted differently. The carrot went in strong and hard and unrelenting. However, after being subjected to the boiling water, it softened and became weak. The egg had been fragile. Its thin outer shell protected its liquid interior, but after sitting through the boiling water, it had become hardened inside. The ground coffee beans were unique. However, after they were in the boiling water, they had changed the water. "Which are you?" she asked her granddaughter. "When adversity knocks on your door, how do you respond? Are you the carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean? Think of this. Which am I? Am I the carrot that seems strong, but with pain and adversity, I wilt and become soft and lose my strength? Am I the egg that starts out with a soft heart, but changes with the heat? Did I have a fluid spirit, but after death, a breakup, a financial hardship over some trial? Have I become hardened and stiff because of that? Does my shell look the same, but on the inside I'm bitter and tough with a stiff spirit and a hardened heart? Or am I the coffee bean? The bean actually changes the hot water, the very circumstances that bring the pain. When the water gets hot, it releases a fragrance and flavor of your life. If you are the bean, when things are at their worst, you get better and change the situation around you. When the hours are the darkest and the trials are the greatest, do you elevate to another level and make others better, or do you make the situation worse? So which are you? The carrot, the egg, or the coffee? So it's a good little lesson about how to manage the stresses of life. And I know nobody knows more stress than what farmers go through with the weather, markets, and the government, okay?
Government.
So anyhow, that brings us to my corny jokes, and I'm just going to apologize right now. I mean, I'm just going to let you know, but you know, what's going on right now that I would come up with a corny joke? Well, it's back to school time, right? Back to school. All the parents are getting ready to get their youngsters back to school and all the stresses that go with the change of routine, okay? So anyhow, these are all related to going back to school. So what is the smartest bug, Ben? Do you have any idea? The spelling bee. The spelling bee, okay? Where do kids in New York learn multiplication? Their multiplication tables, you know. Times Square. Times Square, okay? See, I told you they were bad. I'll bore you with just a few more, and then we'll call it a day before we get shot.
Did you get those from Lynn this year?
Pardon me?
Did you get those from Lynn this week?
Yeah, no, they get from Lynn.
I got fired from the restaurant, by the way.
Well, anyhow, you know what a cyclops is, don't you? It's the guy with one big eye, okay. Why did the cyclops teacher have such an easy first day of school? Why did the cyclops teacher have such an easy first day of school? He only had one pupil. That's actually a little bit amusing.
That's not too bad.
What do librarians take with them when they go fishing? If you're a librarian and you go fishing, what do you take with you? A bookworm. A bookworm. I think that's it. Maybe there might be one more oh yeah, I got one more. It's definitely not saving the best to last. Why did the kid cross the playground? Why did the kid cross the playground? To get to the other slide.
There you go.
All right. Anyhow, thanks everybody for watching today. We sincerely appreciate your business. I know harvest is close. We hope that you have a safe harvest, and hope your family is healthy and safe. We'll see you next week.